And good morning, everybody. Welcome to the June 4th board. And we also have Vice Chair Ty Menser. How did I mess that up? And our County Manager, Romero Chavez, and Assistant County Manager, Robin Campbell. Welcome. And this is a kind of an open forum. We have an agenda. The first one is the Thurston Climate Action Team request.
Yeah, Commissioners, attached for your, and I believe you received this letter, Commissioner Hutchins, and I believe that reading this letter, you froze up, Commissioner Hutchins.
Frozen. I'm not getting it, Romero.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
You're not breaking up now, but go ahead, try it now.
So how's the how is the feed for Commissioner Menser and Robin?
I don't hear.
Is it my feed or Commissioner Hutchins'
Yeah,
feed?
Hutch is
This
freezing
is not
up on me.
functioning.
Ramiro,
It's not functioning. It's not functioning. Robin's frozen, you're frozen, Romero, Ty's frozen.
So Commissioner Hutchins,
I'm gonna log out and start again.
yes, I think it's your connection. We'll wait for you.
Good morning.
Oh, wait.
So it's just Hutch freezing up, is that all?
I believe it's his connection, yes.
Seem to be.
Just come in the room here and have a damn meeting.
I've noticed in the last few days there's been greater technical challenges. Oh,
That's weird.
Now we have
There we
to,
go. Now I hear you. And you're not freezing, that's a very
We
good
have
thing.
you and a frozen you on the
yeah,
screen.
All
now
right.
the- now
I am going to
frozen-
start again.
No.
The frozen you has disappeared, so that's good.
I logged out and started fresh again. Now I can see you and hear you. Robin's frozen again. No, you're all frozen. And now choppy. Am I coming in?
Yeah, you might come into the room and then we can work on that.
Got it.
And I think it's the demand on the system because everybody's using this.
Just overloaded and
Yeah.
they don't have enough servers or something. I think they're renting servers somewhere.
Yeah, it's not just this, I mean,
Yeah.
it's worldwide, the demand. Have your agenda, sir?
Want to sit back here? They can still see me.
Yeah, so now we'll turn my, so I don't give my back to you. What do you want to say?
Sit here.
They need to see you, so you may want to take this.
I'll tell you what, I'll sit right by where his hat is.
Why don't you sit here? I'll take the side.
No, you want to sit
Here.
No,
You don't wanna just go back to.
The chair
No,
needs,
this
the
is
chair
right
needs to, the chair needs to address the public. I don't.
Are we still running?
Yes.
I muted though. Okay.
I just give him the finger.
I'll put it on.
Okay.
This is technology at its finest. So we're going to continue on June 4th, 2020. And this is the Board of County Commissioners check-in. And for those that want to dial in, the phone number is 360-252, that's 252-9020, and the PIN number is 1234, if you'd like to listen in. And here we go. The first thing on the agenda is the Thurston Climate Action Team request. And so I'm going to turn to Ramiro.
Yeah,
Framing?
I received this letter. I believe the letter is addressed to you, Commissioner Hutchins. And you requested to have this conversation with the board. I briefly read this letter this morning. And the gist of this letter is for you to consider having a meeting with representatives from the Thurston Climate Action Team, particularly with Mr. Chris Van Dolen. He's the chair of the Northwest Eco Building Guild. And so many different words. He would like to make a presentation to the board related to the use of the CARES money and how the CARES money can probably support some of the projects. There's not specific projects they have listed in here, so I wouldn't be able to say whether they qualify for the funding or not. And so that's the gist of the letter.
And when I received this from Chris Van Dalen, it seemed appropriate to bring it to the board because they're requesting CARES Act money. And we have several requests out for that. And to make an educated decision, we should ask or invite these folks, if they would like to discuss it with us, at least to give them an opportunity to discuss it with the board of county commissioners before we decide. So I don't know, is that something we'll be setting up a briefing with these folks, or is it timely enough?
Well, that's a conversation you need to have with your seatmates.
Okay.
Yeah.
So number one, I guess for my seatmates, is this something you would like to entertain a one-on-one with Chris, or just a board briefing, or both?
Well, I'm curious about the CARES money, how it would be applicable. I don't understand that.
So I don't know what type of projects, and I don't know if in fact some of the projects they might propose may be in response to the emergency. That's one of the key items. So I won't be able to tell you.
Is there any chance we could have Chris, I don't know, brief somebody on the staff or something so we don't have those unknowns to see what their proposals actually are? I wouldn't mind meeting with them, but the timing is crucial because we're gonna make a decision fairly soon on other issues, including the EDC's request.
And United Way, and
Yeah.
it has to be spent by
Right.
October 31st.
And this is just one organization that's asking, although a very important organization. It's still a situation where do we have them come in, and then do we have every other organization come in, and how much time is there? Treating everybody fairly. So that's kind of where I'm coming from about when somebody makes a proposal, but we don't know what the proposal is. That's pretty broad.
Well, and this is about the second or third request we're gonna get, or have. And that's why I was asking if you want to meet with them one-on-one or have a board briefing, rather than have staff meet with them. And I can do that, have staff meet with them and come back, but I'm not sure what the proposal or how in-depth they would be. And then it starts getting watered down a bit. Commissioner Menzer, what do you say?
I think if we read this letter a little more broadly, it might make more sense. I think that, because I've spoken with these folks once as well on this, and I'm not sure that they're so focused into this particular $15.7 million of CARES money. I think what they're looking at is a little bit broader and thinking that our economy is going to be in a terrible shape. President Trump or Biden or whoever may end up creating stimulus packages along the line of President Obama's in the Great Recession that tries to find projects in the community to get the economy restarted. I think they're looking at more kind of high level, like anticipating federal stimulus money of any sort, and they want us to be, my understanding of their request is they want us to be aware of and possible overlaps and synergies, and our EDC aware of things that might be coming out of our climate mitigation plan, so that we can, plug those things in quickly with shovel-ready projects. I'm not sure that they're just worried about the decisions that we're going to make next Friday about the CARES COVID related. Although I'm sure they would like to see any overlap there if there is any. But I agree with you guys that timing is tight there, and the side rails on the money might not be appropriate for some of the stuff here. I don't know, but I am interested in just kind of trying to connect those dots. I actually, in response to my meeting with Chris Van Dalen, I asked Jenica to basically try to connect a little bit of the dots. I basically just tried to get her to connect Allison Osterberg, who's working with climate mitigation, to the folks at EDC, just so they could have a conversation, just to say, hey, the county invested in a climate mitigation plan. There may be projects that are embedded in there. I don't know. I don't attend those meetings, but there may be projects embedded in there that are overlapping with economic recovery. Can you just make sure that there's some sharing of information? And I don't know if she did or didn't do that, but that was what I did in response to my first meeting. So I'm I mean, this thing about, there's a few things kind of embedded in this letter. One is Thurston Energy. I don't really know much about it. I don't know if the Community Energy Efficiency Block Grant Program managed by Department of Commerce still exists. I don't know what this program did for Thurston County and why it stopped. So I'd be interested in some information from staff on that. I'd be interested in knowing, like Ramiro says, there's no specific list of projects, but the letter keeps saying we're prepared with shovel-ready initiatives, creative financing, and incentive strategies. I think the board should hear that, not just about CARES funding, but about economic stimulus, about our Thurston climate mitigation investments that we've made. We probably should just know what they've got up their sleeve there, and then Commissioner, I wanted to use this opportunity to just say that Commissioner Edwards has been talking a lot about deregulation of things lately, and I'm not 100% behind him on some of the stuff, but if we might be able to work together, I would absolutely work with him on deregulation package for clean energy projects, for net zero, carbon zero buildings for commercial and energy retrofits for buildings. I mean, I would be more than happy to try to work on a sensible package of deregulation to sweep away barriers so that those become incentivized for developers to undertake. So that's something that's embedded in this letter as well, and something that maybe based on the conversations that we've had as a board that we could work on.
So here's what I would proffer then. Number one, to what you were saying, TCAT is, which is Thurston Climate Action Team. TCAT is the forefront as well in my mind as to how we can support them and support our community in that regard. So, and timelines are very tight. How about if I reach out to either Chris Van Dalen or Tom Crawford, the president of TCAT, get the information we need either today or tomorrow, and then bring it back early next week so I can brief the board on what they've had to say.
Sounds good.
Save timing, save a lot of timing.
So that's good. And
Robert's got something, I think.
but also, and maybe to take into consideration, because when the board made initial decisions to set aside some of the CARES money for outside purposes, you clearly identified what those purposes will be. Was the small business or startup, which Thurston Strong was part of that, is also social services, which perhaps United Way was part of that. You never gave direction to make it available to other organizations outside of those two entities. So if this is something you like to do, I'd like for you to be mindful that you have not reached out to any other organization that perhaps could have valid projects for you to consider as well.
Or with that in mind,
And Robin has some.
and I'll get to Robin, but with that in mind, if we were to give whatever funding we give to the EDC or Thurston Strong for this, and we can put guardrails on that, right, or side rails on that funding, maybe they could include TCAT somehow. I don't know if it, but again, like you were saying, Commissioner Edwards, I don't know how it fits with the CARES money, if it fits or not. I have no idea yet.
I know Robin wants to get in here, but is there any chance that we could at least immediately, maybe they're watching our discussion if they knew it was on the agenda today, that we could at least get them those 5 points that.
The questions?
Yeah, that if you have to answer true, I guess is the answer to those 5 points. And so they know what we're working with as far as the criteria to meet eligibility.
Right.
Because I think they might be talking farther down the road and talking about triple pane windows instead of thermal pane windows, or, a certain percentage of a power grid assist by putting, panels on the roof, or,
Yeah.
those kind of things. But I can't see a nexus right now, but maybe I'm not looking at a broad enough picture, because I just don't think there's a connection there that I can see that are directly related to answering those 5 questions.
And as Commissioner Mentor said, they may be looking at a much broader down the road. Don't forget about us. This is critical. Robin, please, it's your turn.
Thank you. So the CARES Act that was passed by the federal government has many funding streams, not all of them coming to government. Some of them go directly to the community and certain sectors of the community. So it's possible that they are not only talking about the thing that we refer to as the CARES Act is actually the Coronavirus Relief Fund, the CRF. That's our 15.7 million. That's only one of many available funding opportunities from the CARES Act. So it's very possible that something that this group could propose is eligible for one of the other funding streams. And you may want to explore that with this group.
Okay.
Yeah, I would just point out that there are 3 bullets. This may be what Robin's getting at. There are 3 bullets on the top of page 2 of their letter. The second and third one related to securing grants for solar energy projects targeted at low-income residents, providing grants and incentives to high-profile net zero energy affordable housing demonstration projects. So that may be, it caught my attention that 2 of the 3 bullets were asking us to try to secure grants that, maybe they're aware of things that we haven't discussed. I don't know.
It's possible. Because again, some of the CARES money does not come through government or local government.
They are making the connection or the nexus with Thurston Strong in our discussion with Thurston Strong and potential funding. So I'll call Chris and or Tom, meet with 1 or 2 of them then. Yes, sir, you were saying something?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Anything further, Ty?
No, thank you.
Oh, Robin, anything more?
So just to conclude the item, Commissioner Hutchins will meet with some of the representatives behind this letter, and then you will come back with additional information with the board?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
I love when you guys give me homework. Next is, before we get to our commissioner items, is the reports on external boards and commissions. And I'll start with Commissioner Mentor. Do you have anything to report, sir?
You may get questions about intercity transit and when they may be trying to, kind of ramp back into fixed route service. The interesting wrinkle for intercity transit is that they've lost like 60% of their drivers for various different reasons. Maybe not lost forever, but lost temporarily, and that has created somewhat of an impediment. The goal is to be at 35% service by fixed route by late June. Sorry. So by the end of this month, maybe during the last week of June, what that's going to look like is trying to cover most of the routes, but just cover them like with hourly service rather than 15-minute service. So it's going to cover most of the places. It's just not going to cover it as much, and they're going to shut down earlier. So it's going to be like 8:30 in the morning to 8:30 in the evening. rather than say 6 in the morning to 11. And it's going to be once an hour versus 15 or half an hour service. That's what's going to basically they're shooting for. They're still working out the kinks in the, in the routing and the staffing and the busing, but that's what's coming, and it's hopefully coming in let's say 3 weeks. And in the meantime, they've provided over 20,000 trips through their reservation service, essential trip reservation service model, which has been very unique. I don't think anyone else is doing it in Washington or anywhere that I'm aware of, and it's been fairly successful trying to get people's basic needs met.
So 20,000 trips on, in a month or throughout the whole program?
Throughout the time they've been doing it,
Okay.
which is, 6 weeks or something like that.
Okay.
And then a related item that I wanted to just let you guys know is related to intercity transit is that I had been contacted by the mayor of Bucota because families in Tenino and Bucota were being served by the Tenino Food Bank, and they were having meals delivered during the pandemic through a van that they were being lent by the food bank. I think the Olympia, whatever. I can't remember which food bank, but one of the food banks, who then, because of their own needs here more in their closer to home, needed the van back. So they were really concerned they weren't going to be able to deliver, and they were not aware of, I guess, the intercity transit community surplus program where surplus intercity transit vans are given out to community groups. So I was happy to be able to connect those dots for them and get that van in the hands of Tenino Food Bank. And I just learned yesterday morning from the mayor of Bucota that they've got the van, they're back up and running, and so meals are being delivered to residents of Bucota and Tenino from the Tenino Food Bank through their intercity transit van. So that was a good South County success story there and collaboration.
Good job, Commissioner.
I'm glad Mayor Carr reached out to you. I hadn't heard anything from Tenino, so I didn't know that was an issue, but I'm glad it got sorted out.
Well, he actually thought he thought that the van they had was an intercity transit van. And so I called intercity transit and was like, what's going on? Why would you? It didn't sound like intercity transit that they would take the van back for any reason, because I know their program. Turned out that the van that was taken back was a food bank van. So they was like, well, then let's talk to intercity transit about getting you a different van, and it worked out. So that's good. Good,
thank you for that.
Yep.
Anything else?
That's all from intercity transit that I can think of. I'll try to think about. No other board or commission burning issue is jumping to mind. Animal Services just passed a budget. Lot is moving along, pretty smoothly. We're working on budget there as well. But if I think of anything, I'll pass to the next commissioner.
I don't know if you can answer these questions, but I'll ask them anyway. Regarding Animal Services, I understand that they emptied out the shelter pretty extensively, either right smack in the middle of this COVID or towards the beginning. Are they empty? Are they doing any more adoptions? Are they bringing anybody in? I don't mean anybody. Any animals in? What's this, the status? Do you know?
I do know. This was somebody asked a question at the meeting we had last week. The answer, I don't have a detailed answer. The high level answer is, yeah, you're right. They were able to get a lot of folks to be fosters for on a temporary basis. They kind of had a lot of people in the community step up, not to be long-term adoptive homes, but to kind of help get animals out of the shelter. So that worked out exceedingly well. They are now about to reopen, I think yesterday, for on a limited staff, and now doing things by appointment, but bringing animals back in based on the staffing. So they're ramping kind of a la intercity transit. They're going to ramp back up to regular service, but do it in phases. And the second phase of that was this week. So we'll see how that goes. But it was surprisingly well handled and smooth. We didn't have, because we had a lot of support from the community. And people were asking, well, now can we get these adopt permanent homes? And Sarah, our director, was clear to say that, she's seen this situation happen before. And basically what it does is you don't necessarily get more people that want to permanently adopt animals, but what you do is you build kind of a reserve corps of people that are willing to, in the next crisis, again, be on the roster for emergency placement of animals. So it does build capacity for dealing with emergencies over time, and so that has happened during this issue. We also, this is an interesting issue since you brought up animal services. You might have heard that Olympia passed an ordinance about retail stores that sell animals from puppy mills. And I learned a lot about this issue. I didn't actually know a lot about it, but the board has put together a pretty detailed letter to kind of outline the problem and ask other jurisdictions to consider an action along the line, so we'd have a regional approach. So the board will be getting a letter, and I encourage you to read it carefully, because I didn't really understand this issue until it was kind of outlined to me. We have the president of the president of the JASCOM board is Lisa Parsley, who's a veterinarian and Olympia City Councilwoman, and then we have a veterinarian board member.
Chris.
So we have two veterinarians who have a lot of knowledge about how these things go, and so it's something that the board will get and can consider at a later time.
Wonderful. Well, that's a kind of a win all across the board. I think like a trifecta with having people in the community step up to do the temporary foster, that it saves animal services a tremendous amount of money in upkeep and babysitting the animals. It gets the community involved, and I would be shocked if at least one of however many don't fall in love with the animal itself and want to go through the adoption. So that's cool as well. But I'm sure they will somehow get the word out through public service, whatever, that they're back in business, or opening up, ramping up to get back in business as a service to our community that have animal needs.
Yeah, there was talk about communication. I don't recall exactly what they had lined up, but there will be hopefully some visible information for the community.
Very good, very good. And Sarah's doing a great job so far, I understand. Good.
Yeah, took over at a tough time.
Commissioner Edwards, what might you have?
Well, I think the only thing of note is the SWAC meeting, solid waste. And probably the biggest issue that was discussed at solid waste was flow control, which is an upcoming ordinance possibility, and what's going to be in that ordinance. And I'd been told early on that was going to be curbside only, but the draft ordinance does not reflect that. And the concern is driving up the cost of construction. And let me just use schools as an example. We're doing a lot of school construction in our community now, and that's going to be beneficial for jobs. But we want to make sure that we don't have portions in that new ordinance that add to the cost of school construction. In other words, demolition debris. I'll just use that as an example. So if that was to have to go through our site over at Hawks Prairie, it would drive the cost up to the contractors. Then the school gets a lesser product for the dollar spent. And therein lies the problem. So we want to make sure that we get the best bang for the buck, because the taxpayers are paying to build these schools. A side note on that issue would be that we already have a traffic problem over there with the volume in and out. We've also come close to capacity as it is now with curbside service. And if we get to the point that we're over capacity, then we've got to build an addition onto the existing facility over there to deal with that. But I don't think we're ever gonna have the ability to deal with the traffic. So one doesn't go very good with the other because of its location probably as much as anything else. So that is probably the biggest issue that is being discussed on the boards and commissions that I'm involved in, other than the sales tax issue that some, like the communication center and stuff, they're directly funded through a sales tax proposal. Whatever the reduction is in sales tax is going to be somewhat reflected in their operation, whether or not they have to cut back. I see the county manager's got his hand up.
Well, I want, before I get, I'm gonna go to the resident expert
Okay,
on that. But speaking of sales tax, eventually, not today, but eventually, as we're coming out of this emergency, that I still want to engage the board and or the community in a 0.1% public safety tax to support the sheriff. But I'm going to turn to the county manager because you're talking about SWAC and flow control, and I've heard the same concerns that, and I don't know if it's a definition of residential or curbside residential versus construction, but I hear for like schools, it's going to jack up the price that they would have to pay for demolition or removal, whatever.
Yeah.
So, Romero.
So, I was the
Pardon my
one,
back.
I was the one who provided you that information, Commissioner Edwards. So I will be curious to see what the ordinance states that is going to increase the cost for construction disposal. Because as far as I understand, this flow control ordinance does not increase the fees of disposal. So, and I believe, so if you can share additional information in terms of what are your concerns that you have related to construction disposal, maybe I totally missing the point of this whole conversation, but as far as I understand, I checked with Jennifer yesterday because checking how the SWAC meeting went. I said, as far as I understand, this ordinance does not increase the fees, the disposal fees, because the increase of disposal fees is a different action the board needs to have. So,
Well, if it doesn't then, does it, is there a differentiation now between residential and commercial disposal?
so
I would imagine there is.
well, and again, I think we probably, I need to look at the ordinance itself. But as far as I understand, the fee structure is not going to change at the work when we process that. So, so I will be curious as to the concerns the school districts have in terms of disposing construction materials at the work. So
let me follow up on that conversation maybe just a bit. From my understanding, I have very limited understanding on the whole thing as well. But it looks like right now, some construction material being disposed of, and I'm just using schools because this could apply to any
right.
type of a major construction project that goes on. And the last thing I want to do is create an ordinance with regulatory burdens for business that would add to the cost of their project. I mean, we're coming out of this recession, you might say, and I want to do everything I can to enhance our economic engine, not to stifle it. So,
Let alone with schools that have limited funding.
yes, they have limited fundings, and they want to get a one-time best deal they can get. We're in the middle of talking about imposing pretty serious penalties on contractors that would dispose of a product without going through the transfer over at Hawks Prairie. And I guess that takes place now that they have the option of taking construction material elsewhere, I guess. I don't know that. I guess they maybe load up a railroad box car or something, and that never does get through our transfer station. And yes, the prices aren't gonna change any, but if the requirement of, that everything has to go through that transfer station, and consequently, we're gonna charge them for a transfer of that material to another container, for an example, and then that goes into our landfill. I don't know all the breakdown, I'm just using that as an example.
Yeah, that is a good piece of information.
That we don't wanna create another burden for the industry. I mean, I know the industry right now, I'm talking about schools, because I'm very concerned we get the best bang for our buck when we build a school, not have to pay for a bunch of maybe unnecessary overhead that doesn't have to be taken, except the way this ordinance is written. It's a requirement, everything in the county now goes, would be required to go to our site over at Hawks Prairie. But we don't have the capacity for traffic ingress egress, or we're already at maximum with curbside service. So I don't know who proposed this, but this is, in my estimation, it's a mistake to add another burden and additional cost onto the whole construction portion of it. Commissioner Menser brought up that I'm looking for reduction in the regulatory burden, and this is just an example of that.
That's a good piece of information for me. I will follow up on the proposal because I have not read it. I will be curious as to how we're going to be requiring.
Well, the way it's written now, it's a requirement. There's no exceptions. I think we need to have something.
You read that though?
Yeah. I mean, it's in the proposed
Right, no,
draft ordinance. We've got a subcommittee now that's been formed at the SWAC. And those folks will be reviewing and making recommendations to us. But I'm just saying, this report is strictly about our boards and commissions that we individually sat on, and that's the hottest topic. I mean, there's no point in talking about a lot of other little mundane things that are going on, but that sounds like a pretty hot topic, and we need to probably pay attention to it, because the proposal is that this ordinance be put into place before we finalize these contracts. We've kind of, I don't know the right term, we've aligned all the contracts to run out, I think, within about a 3-year period. This ordinance looks like it's on a fast track to get put into place, and I don't understand why.
Okay.
So I want to find out a little more about that. Why do we need it right now before we get our contracts aligned and go out for RFP on this whole major garbage thing? I mean, look, the public doesn't realize this, but we're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars in contracts that are going to go out. And we want to make sure we get it right for the benefit of the taxpayers, but also for the benefit of the businesses and things like excessive regulatory burden on businesses.
Over a 10 or 20-year period.
Yeah, it could be a 20-year contract.
Commissioner Menser, do you have any questions or comments?
Nope, just interesting discussion, just listening in.
Yeah, so I'll read the ordinance in more detail because granted, I have not read it. So, but again, I'll be curious as to how we're going to be requiring a contractor who is producing materials, how we're going to be requiring them to go through the work.
Yeah.
I mean, perhaps I'm missing a total point on this myself.
It's contrary to what you told me some time back. Let me just put it that way.
Because that's my understanding, is because what I mentioned to you is the fees will not change.
No, but the volume and flow will.
Well, yeah, but I'm just curious now with this information as to how we're going to be requiring a contractor that does business in Thurston County, regardless of whether it's a school or not, did they have to take their refuse to the work?
Apparently, right now, they do not have to. They
Well, no,
make other
because they have the
arrangements.
option to go to First County, Lewis County, or anywhere else.
But now, under this new ordinance, it looks like everything has to go to to our
Right.
Hawks Prairie site.
Well, I
Under
understand
flow
that,
control.
but
Yes, under the flow control ordinance.
I
as
guess
proposed.
I'm focusing more on the how.
Well, it's written into the
How
ordinance.
we enforce that?
How are we gonna enforce that?
Yeah, that we would know.
Oh, how are we gonna enforce
If
it?
it's debris in Lewis County, how would we know?
Well, I tell you what, there's a heck of a set of fines that go with this. That's my concern, that through this fine proposal, assessed against these businesses that do take it on themselves and violate the ordinance, because the way the ordinance is written, it all has to go through our system.
So, okay, so that takes a totally different spin, at least
Well,
in
it
my
does now,
mind.
yeah.
So,
And so-
more homework that I need to.
I guess if we were to go along with this as proposed, it looks to me like we would need to create a whole nother division of the garbage police or the
Or code
recycle
enforcement
police.
officers.
Well,
Yeah, I heard well.
Well, but,
And I don't wanna go that route.
No, and I'm surprised, put it that way. So
Okay.
I'll need to do additional homework.
I'm interested in like how many, where are the contractors going? Like, and are they going somewhere because we're just not competitive with the prices, or are they going, is the place they're going, they're not properly disposing of the materials and it's damaging to the environment, and we have a higher level of environmental protection regulation? And I'd be curious as to what, is it just a very small, stratum of contractors that generate a massive amount of material, or is everybody leaving Thurston County to find some better deal in Lewis or somewhere else? Getting a sense of that would be useful in terms of trying to
I don't
figure
think
this out.
they're not going to Pierce County, they're not going to the north, because the cost is more up there, I'm told. So they may be going to the south
They might
with
be
their
going
Oh,
to
the
own,
South shut us down, so I
With
know
their-
from Thurston County coming in.
with their own trucking. And I don't know where that's going, or whether they have, agreements with others that put it on a rail car. I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, that was the height of the concern that was brought out, and, if you're interested, the discussion, I suppose, our meeting yesterday might have been recorded, I suppose.
No, I think what we may need to do is have another executive session related to this matter. And just have the director come and walk us through the proposed ordinance. And I have to admit, I'm totally off on this.
I would welcome that.
I'm totally
Yeah.
totally off because I was not tracking that we are gonna be requiring construction material disposal to go to the work. And how we're gonna be implementing fees if somebody doesn't do that? And how are we going to enforce that?
Or police it.
So I'm totally off on this. I apologize, but I think it's more homework.
Well, we'll get more information when we have
So
a.
I'm sure Jennifer is listening to this, so I will touch base with her later.
I had a discussion with Mark yesterday morning before our SWAC meeting.
Mark.
He's our new director.
Yeah, he's the work,
Okay.
So, more to come. How about, let's just put it that way, more
more to come.
to come.
Do you have anything that's controversial?
Well, I don't even know that this is going to be. I'm just saying there's some concerns.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else?
Well, no, that's the main
Okay.
hot topic, worth making sure you folks are aware of.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Regarding my boards and commissions, the CLDE, which is the Capital Lake Deschutes Estuary Executive Management Team, we had about an hour phone call just a few days ago with the consultants, just kind of rehashing and refreshing all of us where we are and our conversations last from several months ago. It's been several months since we've met. And just kind of get us up to speed again before our June 15th Zoom meeting with everybody. So they've done a little bit more work. That'll all be presented on the 15th, and we'll have more robust conversation then. Then there was a, regarding the EDC, bring up my notes here. we're gonna hear more on that regarding the EDC and Thurston Strong's ask for funding, as well as, let's see, that was about it for the EDC, I think. And you're all up to speed on that. They also have what other counties are doing regarding their CARES Act funding. And I think, and you're part of that conversation on Wasatch Zoom regarding other CARES Act money. And I think, I don't remember the counties, I think Kitsap County was kicking in
$1 million.
$1 million. I said it was like, yeah, it was a percentage. I forget what the percentage was, but it was $1 million. There was another county, I'm not sure it was Gray's, that was kicking in more funding than that. But they all seem to be kind of sticking, I shouldn't say they all, sticking to the same, about $1 million, $1.5 million, $2 million, somewhere in there.
For what, Hutch?
What's that?
$1 million for what?
Oh, for, into their economic development folks, for
Oh, their
restarting the economy
grant.
from their CARES Act money. Which is, the ES of CARES is, I think, economic stimulus or economic security, something like that. And so they're working on that. Others have not weighed in on it just yet, regarding their allocation of that funding. But we'll hear more about the EDC and or Thurston Strong and United Way as it comes up. There was a WASAC Zoom a couple of days ago, and Ramiro was a part of that too. Very interesting. And Dr. Weisman with the State Department of Health was a guest speaker. He spent about 30 minutes and handled a ton of calls and good information. Number one, he's leaving at the end of the governor's term. He'll be on his way to brighter pastures, I'm sure. Look at my notes, here we go. One of the counties asked if there was additional funding coming from the state for public health and social services because of our demands and needs and requirements. And kind of the short answer was, don't look for the state for more money coming, and look at other levels of government to fund PHSS. Which means there's no money. I'm not sure there's other levels of government that are gonna kick in for it, but not to be expecting any more money to come. I read an article this morning at ODark 30 that Pierce County is supplying masks and thermometers to businesses. They must have a gajillion of these things. And through an application to Pierce County, you tell us what you want. It's not to the public, it's to businesses. Tell us what you need, and we'll put you in line, and we'll distribute this equipment to you.
That's the chamber doing that, or the
That's the county, it's
EDC?
the county.
I think the EDC ought to be doing that myself, but
Well, okay,
rather
but
than
this,
us.
the article, and I had Kelly this morning, I asked her to get that article to each of you folks, and to you, Romero, so you have it. I think you might have it already. But get the article to you that talks about what Pierce County is doing themselves to the businesses, to support the businesses in the reopening.
But on that topic, that very thing was one of the 5 planks of the EDC's Thurston Strong program, right?
Right,
So,
that was part of the program.
To the extent that we contribute resources to that program, we're covering that, at least to some degree. Pierce County, I always like to point out when it comes to the comparisons, they've got a separate health department that's completely, they're structured very differently. And I think seems like when it comes to health issues, Pierce County is not always the best analog to us.
Yeah, and the
You're
money.
exactly right too
yeah.
about that.
And the money distribution to Pierce County was a little bit different to Thurston County because it's no comparison in terms of the population. I believe Pierce County received close to $140 million. So it is, the allocation for the CARES money for county's population over 500,000 was a little bit different.
So it's apples and avocados, really. Because if there's a separate, you're right, there's a separate entity, it's not the county doing it, it's the health department doing it.
Right.
And ours
I mean,
is public health, which is a subsidiary of Thurston County, one of our departments.
You may also remember that we looked at how Pierce County allocated. They had 5 buckets of money, if you will, that they used for their CRF. So they had set aside a very specific amount of money to assist business. One of the things they did.
Okay, and Dr. Weisman, I asked if he could give an update on, or at least explain to the counties that were on board, the definition the state is using for a COVID-related death. And he explained it as we had heard from Dr. Diana Yu, that what they currently have been doing is if somebody died and they happen to have COVID, they connected those 2 dots and called it a COVID-related death. But he said now they are looking at if somebody died and they died of a specific disease and they may or may not have COVID, but that didn't cause the death, and not counting that as a stat to a COVID-related death. And he said it's just a metric in their data system that's being changed now, and they will be looking at the other deaths throughout the state to assess whether they were COVID-related deaths or someone died and they happened to have COVID, but that was not the cause of death. So they're going to be revamping. That's going to take them time to sort through all of those numbers, but they are looking at that, which is kind of cool, to give us more accurate data. And if someone dies of a specific disease and they happen to have it, let's not call it a COVID-related death and skew the stats. So let's get good, accurate information. No money more from the state. And he emphasized this is highly important. I mean, he emphasized it, extremely important to the governor and to him, that when we have people that are on isolation or quarantine, that our health department follow up with them daily. And so that's a phone call, it's an email, it's a text. Hey, how you doing? How's family support? Do you need anything from us? Follow up consistently until they are out of quarantine or isolation. That is vital to their well-being and recovery, and making sure that every need is being met. And it's a requirement that public health do that with everybody that's in quarantine or isolated, that there is daily follow-up, and that follow-up is documented and sent to the State Department of Health. So even if you have someone that's not responding or says, forget it, I'm not playing this game, I'm done, and they don't want to cooperate, that's documented and sent to the state. But it's highly important to the governor and to Dr. Weisman and to our health department that there's constant daily follow-up with all of our folks in quarantine and that are isolated. And let me see, then we had at our Rotary meeting yesterday, Deb Clements, the superintendent of North Thurston Public Schools, attended and gave a presentation on their reopening of the schools and the help that they're receiving from the public health department. Tremendous amount of help with Shelley and her crew. They're gonna have thermometers because they have to thermometer everybody coming into the school without exception, everybody coming in, and it's documented. And they have to have a tremendous amount of masks for staff, wash stations throughout the school. And this is just one school district. Wash stations throughout the school. Distancing needs to be ensured. And she said when it comes to the choirs and the band and orchestra, how do you ensure social distancing? And my question was, how do you ensure social distancing when you've got 2, 3, 4, 6 kids in the nurse's office, which is generally no bigger than a hall closet? And how do you sort that out to keep those kids socially distanced? And I asked if there was any capital projects the school was having to undertake in reconfiguring rooms, the nurse's office, the front office, band, choir, whatever, to ensure the safety of the kids and staff. And she said, no, there's no capital projects looming to reconfigure the operation or the configuration of the school or schools. But they're working around that in very creative ways. And again, that's just one school district out of all of ours. And they're receiving, I think, masks and thermometers, I believe, through ESD 113 or OSPI is kicking in sufficient supplies. Won't say sufficient, kicking in supplies to the schools throughout the state as well. So there's some cooperation there. But it was a good presentation.
Did the schools get their separate CARES package through the superintendent of public instruction?
I'm gonna presume, yes, but I don't know for a fact.
Don't know.
Do you know?
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know, and Deb didn't mention it, so I don't know.
I just wondered, I mean, if we're supplying a lot of things like masks and thermometers and stuff like that, if they've got their own.
Well, they must, because I think that's what's being supplied by either ESD 113 or from OSPI to the ESDs throughout the state.
Shelley was doing that.
No.
Okay.
No, but they're working with the health department, of course.
No,
too.
Okay.
we provide assistance and technical assistance.
Okay,
Yeah, but
okay,
we're not supplying stuff to the schools.
okay.
It's coming from the state, via the ESD. And that is, let me just make sure it's on my list. That's all I had to report. Okay.
Maybe I'd do one follow-up
Yeah.
question to you in regard to that. Any update on what the governor or Commerce is planning to do with that $240 million they're holding back from CARES?
Zero.
There, no information.
No input, no indication at all, as well. But you bring up a good point. Somebody asked Dr. Weisman about phase 3 and phase 4. When, what will it look like? When can we apply? When? And his answer pretty much was that he does not know. It's still up in the air. It's still being discussed.
I thought we were gonna be eligible to apply for phase 3 here in about a week.
June 17th.
17th, right.
And we're gonna be ready to submit an application then.
Thank you.
But that's still, I mean, that's done. But there's still tweaks here and there. And phase 4, he says he has no idea that will come from the governor. When it comes from the governor, he wasn't going to get in front of it.
I think what Commissioner Hutchins is mentioning is there is what is in the work is the guidance under phase 3. That is not has been published. I believe today they're going to be issuing the guidance for phase 3. And I don't believe that is why no counties have been approved yet to move into phase 3 because the guidance is not in place.
So are they gonna come out, you think, today with the per capita numbers as far as per 100,000 and that type of thing?
No, that guidance already being given last week.
I thought that was 25.
Yeah, 25 per 100,000, so we're under a different
Okay,
threshold. But I think the guidance is for instance, the guidance for under phase 2 gives specific requirements, suggestions for businesses, how they can open.
okay.
And that's what is in the works, I believe, is the guidance as to how businesses can open under phase 3, what they need to do.
And they're still watching the counties, which is pretty much everybody now, I believe, that's in phase 2, watching their numbers to make sure that they are sustainable and not having to revert back to phase 1 or giving assistance or guidance how to remain in phase 2 if you're kind of like hanging in the threshold. So that, boy, they have a ton of work that they're doing and need to do still. But that is it.
They came up with modified phase 1, but Clark County's still in phase 1 because they had the outbreak at the fruit processing plant. They reapplied yesterday. I'm watching that one carefully because my mom's there, but has not been approved yet.
And Weisman did say that they were giving it takes them about a half a day to a day and a half to get the approval done. So they're pushing it. They're helping where they can.
Did you guys? I've been on a lot of these COVID or CRF funding WASAC calls, and I know we've talked about our hazard pay being covered. What I heard was kind of maybe, probably, sort of, but I'm looking at Robin, did we get a definitive answer that it's covered?
No, we have not yet received the definitive answer on that, but we are going to claim it.
Well,
Go ahead.
I want to point out that the answer is true on all of those 5 points that are required. So let's remember, the answer is true.
It's a 50-50 question.
Well,
But if
the
the
answer is
check
true,
needs to
so
get
I'd
to
like to hear, is anybody saying the answer is not true?
When
To
Jeff
those
Gadman
5
has the
points.
check in his hand, then I'm.
I think the test in those 5 questions will be whether Commerce reimburses when we submit their request.
Well,
Yeah.
they better start thinking about the answer is true or not.
Well, that's why we have Elizabeth
Yeah, no.
Pepperidge here to push that.
I will say, I have really not a lot of faith in government. That old deal about trust me, I'm from the government, if you depended on that, that's not always turned out to be beneficial. So let's be cautious, but let's push.
Go ahead, Ty.
I'm not trying to rehash an issue I lost on, but one of the questions is it necessary? And I think you could arguably say that it's not necessary expenditure. And if the state wanted to interpret that against us, we could not get I don't think that's a slam dunk. That's a judgment call.
I think that the state has left it open to each county to interpret necessary. So that is up to our interpretation. I think that Commerce will reimburse us when we claim the cost. What I don't know is what a federal auditor will say when they come and audit it.
Well, I think what helps in getting approval from Commerce is the fact that they're not talking about millions and millions of dollars, because we're apparently the only county in the state that's doing it. And they may just look at it and say, well, okay.
Well,
I
that can
think
probably,
that supports a slam dunk that it's eligible.
well, that can go either way.
It could go that way. You're right. Well, I'm ready to argue it that it goes with the yes.
You know, I see Commissioner Menser brought up that intercity transit has lost, maybe temporarily, but many of their drivers. You know, that this might be something that could be utilized even to bring them back. If you think about what they're up against as a transit driver, and the history of those transit drivers, especially in New York, and what has happened to those folks, we might need a little incentive at some point in time.
You talking about hazard pay for the IT folks?
Yes.
The drivers?
Yes, because those folks also are facing that possibility of interaction with unknown and the chance that they're gonna take that back to their families.
Did IT implemented the hazard pay, Commissioner Messer?
No, they did not. I'm just saying that might be something to think about.
So related to the drivers they have lost, through layoffs and furloughs, or those drivers decided to move on to something different?
No, they haven't necessarily. It's been an interesting kind of suite of or array of reasons of why they're drivers that are ready, willing, and able to drive today. Some of them had concerns about their safety and health, given what was going on directly prior to the shutdown of the fixed route service. Some of them are in high risk categories. Some of them, it's been a variety of things. So I've been surprised, honestly, that hit them like that. So yeah, I mean, that might be a situation. I kind of agree with Commissioner Edwards. Like, that's one where I think you could make a strong case for necessary. Like, we don't have drivers to get the service going. If we're going to have to incentivize the risk and put those drivers back in the seats, they are installing plexiglass shields and they're going to do different things and try to keep the buses at lower capacity. But it's been a challenge. We have public health workers I know for Thurston County that I think would fall into that category as well. But it's just been it's a tricky issue. There's no doubt about that.
It is that. Any other commissioner items?
Oh, if we're in commissioner items, I got a list.
So let me start with Ty then.
Oh, okay.
You're the lead up the rest of the time. Go ahead, Ty.
Okay, one issue I wanted to kind of hear a little more about, and I don't put Ramiro on the spot. I don't know if he has any more information, but maybe my seatmates have heard more. But this sewage spill that we got notified about, at first I didn't know anything about it. And then I think I read in the Olympian that it was essentially the sewage spill that we had last year was sort of patched with some kind of plastic thing, and then something happened to that as they were trying to do the long-term fix, and that really upset me, to be honest. I'd like to know more about how that was done, why that was done. The first time around, I didn't blame government but kind of that we dealt with last year's spill and created or left ourselves vulnerable, I'll put it that way, to a situation where this could happen again really aggravated me. And I'd like to know, I want to know if we're responsible in some way, if there was something deficient about the way we handled last year's spill that would left ourselves vulnerable to this happening again. But 1,400 whatever it was gallons of raw sewage into our waterways. And again, it was like, I think this happened last year where it happened over a weekend and we're not even sure how many hours there was like this incredible sewage dump into that's just unacceptable to me. I mean, whatever could possibly have been done better, I want done better.
May I, and correct me if I'm wrong, but when I hear you say they and we, they fixed the patch, they did this, that's the city of Olympia.
Yeah, I know it's
And
Olympia and our environmental health that was working together. I don't know who's doing what, but I feel like as the Board of Health, as Thurston County, we have some role in making sure this kind of stuff is done right.
Yeah, that is a good point. I'll follow up in terms of because it is good to understand what our role is. I think it will be good to have that conversation, and I will ask probably Art to come back and give somewhat of a perspective what happened last year, because it was the same pipe that was affected by the tree falling down that it failed, right? And we didn't know that it failed for the second time until it was pretty obvious. So what are the mechanisms in terms of, whether the City of Olympia has a mechanism to see the lack of pressure in any particular pipe to determine that a spill is going on, as opposed to a citizen passing by determining that it's a spill. So that is a good point. I will organize something with Art and on the upcoming conversation.
Okay,
Stand to that.
add to what the county manager said. Thank you for bringing this up. This has been a sore topic of mine for years. Having only been here 3 years, but I've watched municipal spills contaminate the Puget Sound to the tune of hundreds of millions of gallons. And I might point out, you mentioned 1,400 gallons. That was 1,400 gallons an hour.
Yeah,
That was going into this thing. And it went on for many days. We never know exactly. I believe this is an underreported issue. And when we have blowouts throughout the Puget Sound area from municipal operations, it is very common. We've had hundreds of thousands of gallons that are directly attributed to that here locally, and I might say I believe it's millions because I think it's underreported. And we always use the fact that municipal sewer systems are so much better for the environment. I can tell you that's an outright lie when it comes right down to it. On-site septic systems, when they fail, you have a wife that tells her husband, hey, the toilet doesn't flush. Well, I don't know how long they're gonna get along if the toilet doesn't flush, but I can tell you at my house, it ain't gonna be very long. And so you get right on it and you fix it. So you end up with, I don't know, you might end up with 10 gallons or something that somehow seeped out around the tank that didn't go into the drain field or something. but Mother Nature has the ability to deal with that. These municipal systems are an absolute disaster. And the product, the sludge product that comes from these municipal systems ends up on our food source in eastern Washington, where it's spread on these fields by the ton. And our presentation by that scientist here about, within a month, I think, we had a presentation, is a slight example of what's going on in our country nationwide. And nobody is paying attention to this whole problem. Nobody wants to recognize that we are contaminating our own planet every day with this municipal waste. Either it's mishandled or what do you do with it? And I believe we need to come up with a solution and look at this seriously. There's different incinerator issues or something. We might have to pay a little more, but I think it's a fixable problem. But right now, it's not a lot different than the millions of tons of commercial nitrogen that are put on our forests in the Cascade Range that flow right down into the Puget Sound. Nobody wants to talk about it. I've had this conversation with many folks over the last 3 years and asking, why can't we discuss this? Even here locally in Capitol Lake cleanup, we had to take it on ourselves as a board to write a letter to Enterprise Services. They weren't even willing to look into the headwaters of the Deschutes that are contaminating Capitol Lake with these commercial applications. And for those folks of you that might be watching, that's helicopters flying around our pristine forest, putting tons of chemical pesticides, herbicides, fertilizers, all kinds of things are being put on our forest with the permission of Department of Ecology, DNR, the state of Washington. And I don't know why we can't get it as a topic of conversation. I'm on a webinar coming up with Department of Agriculture, I believe, next week. And Commissioner Hutchings, I think you might be on that same activity, but I asked for one of the agenda items to be addressed was this commercial application of chemicals into our forest areas that in turn runs right into the Puget Sound. Every waterway that we have going into the Puget Sound, every river, is carrying these type of contaminants. Nobody wants to recognize it. It's been going on for more than 50 years now through this commercial application process, and we never want to talk about it. During the ORCA hearings that the governor had going, I couldn't get on their agenda to talk about it. So I don't know why we seem to put our fingers in our ears when something comes up that is detrimental. We act like, well, it just doesn't happen. It happens.
So to that end, two things, and that is number one, with the Capitol Lake Deschutes estuary that I've been sitting on for a few years, I have brought that topic up about testing at the headwaters, not just down here, go all the way up at the source of contaminant and find out if it's there or not, or what the problem is, or what the issue is. And I actually had the support of, I know one jurisdiction, perhaps another, for that, but Enterprise Services, I'm not gonna paint a false motive and say they said no because they don't want to know the answer, or they're in bed with the forest industry, I don't know. But the answer was no, because they weren't allotted the funding to do that extra work all the way up upstream. But it has been addressed several times with that, with the CLDE, Capitol Lake Deschutes Estuary Committee. And I don't think it's a dead issue, but it's a dead issue, it's not going anywhere, but it's consistently being messaged that we should be looking at the very source at the very top.
And I have to say, that is the issue. We don't know.
We don't know.
I mean, when we had one of the timber companies come down and make a presentation to the board, when they got done, it sounded just like the tobacco industry telling Congress how good this nicotine was.
It's good for you.
And yeah, let's go out and have some nicotine. Well, I'm here to tell you, when we don't know, I believe that we need to pay attention and find out, because I don't understand making public policy without all of the facts. And when we don't have the facts, we can't make good public policy.
Right.
And I tell you what, this is a disruption to corporate greed, if you will, because the growth rings on those trees, they now are harvesting, I don't know, every 48 years or something like that, where it used to be every 88 years. So they've cut that back, they've cut it in half on the ability to harvest, basically through chemical application. I'm not against chemical application, but I am against putting it in our waterways. And we at least need to study it and see how much is being put on, how many buffer zones are violated. They have a 25-foot buffer between the creek. When they're flying over that with a helicopter at 70 miles an hour, 200 feet, they can't even see the creek. They'll tell you they shut it off. That is a flat lie. I've watched them do it. Where those little pellets are around on the ground, there's also no grouse. And grouse pick up little stones for their gizzards. I don't think they eat it for a food source, but it only takes one of those pellets to kill the grouse. Nobody wants to study it, look at it, because it's corporate greed. And there's a lot of people that are mad at me in the industry because I talk about this on a regular basis. And I think we are missing the boat if we're truly interested in cleaning up Puget Sound. I've talked to NOAA scientists, and those folks had no idea this was even going on. Every group that I've brought this up in front of, none of them knew this was going
I
on.
gotta circle back. to
Okay,
Commissioner Menzel.
I just,
Circling back to you,
kinda on my soapbox.
Commissioner, but you brought up the capital, or the Percival Cove or Percival Creek spill, and I, like you, if we have had millions of gallons spilled of raw sewage, last I heard, which was read in the paper, that our health department's looked at it or is on board. Department of Ecology has been notified. But I never heard any follow-up. So I don't know if it's been fixed. I'm imagining it's been fixed. I don't know what the assessment of damage was to the North or South Capitol Lake or into Puget Sound. And I would like to have some type of follow-up that, hey, it's been fixed. Minimal's dissipated. I want to hear good news, of course, but I want to know what the extent of the damage was, and that it won't happen again shy of a tree coming down, something that we can't prevent. But I would like to follow up on that.
Yeah, I have it
Okay.
on.
Thank you for bringing that up.
Didn't we have some data coming to us? This is back to Commissioner Edwards, but we asked our environmental health to do water testing up at Deschutes Falls so we could get a read on what the water quality was up there. And I know I talked to them after a few months and they had some information, but it wasn't, they needed more time because obviously it's seasonal and things change at different seasons. And I think that they had that time and there was a briefing.
It's
It
coming
probably
up.
got disrupted by the pandemic, but
Yeah, let me give you the date for the new briefing. And
You know, being the county manager's looking that up, you opened another door for me. I'll tell you that when I went out
Thank you.
and looked at, when I had discussions with some of the timber folks, they were very, very concerned that I was even bringing this up. When I asked to take a picture of their map that shows the areas of treatment, because they get permits from the state to do this. And when I asked so I could take a picture of this is proprietary information and stuff. So
Google Earth.
If, it showed the application areas in each drainage. Whatever we come up with, these folks aren't dummies that are doing this. They're very intelligent groups.
You'd think FOIA we'd be able to get that.
And, no, you can get the application areas in the past from our own DNR that keeps records of where these applications have taken place. It's gonna take a major study to look back over 50 years about what they've been doing. And they didn't want any information out of that office. When I was meeting with them, it was very obvious they didn't want any information out of there. Everything we do is in the public. So when we talk about this in the public, as we're doing here, these people pay attention. they're probably not treating anything up there. I don't know the answer to that, but this needs to be looked at much more than just the watershed for the Deschutes. This needs to look at the watershed of the whole Puget Sound if we're gonna be serious about cleaning up the Puget Sound.
So what's the answer? When's our briefing?
Is a schedule for Wednesday, June 17th at 2 in the afternoon.
On the headway water,
And follow up on the water quality. So I will ask Art to be now three items that I have for that is a report on the Percival Creek sewage spillage. Then.
Let me just add one thing. You're talking about you're gonna get a report on Percival Creek, but why not on all the spillage activities that are going on? I think it's a topic to discuss much more than just Percival Creek. That's my point.
Maybe that will be a follow-up, because by June 17th, I don't think we'll have enough time to prepare that. So 3 items that I have, but I was tracking now is the Percival Creek sewage spill. Report on the water quality station gauge that we have up in the Deschutes Park. And we installed that, and Commissioner Minster was correct. Whether we need to go through the whole cycle to determine what the water quality is, maybe have a report on that. And I believe the third item, and this is from Commissioner Hurwitz, would like to explore the water quality thresholds that we have in the code. Is that? Yeah, so those are the 3 items that I have.
That was the nitrate comparisons to the federal
those are
and
the
state
3
level
items
versus
that-
Thurston County.
Now, the 3 items that I track and that you would like to hear the hour briefing on 17th.
It's a
Thank you.
start.
so, and
No,
before,
it's a continuing conversation.
I know.
and before we run out of time, the item that was in the paper about the young lady that fell into the falls at Deschutes Falls Park. Is there anything that I'm not looking for a liability, but is there something we need to do to address that from a structural perspective?
Perhaps this is not the right time to discuss
May I?
that, Commissioner?
Okay, I didn't want to get into an executive session, but I just want to know that it's in my head, and I want to make sure that we're addressing if there's needs to be
The
addressed.
only thing that I know, she decided to go around the fence, and the fence clearly states no trespassing.
Okay, that's good info, but thank you.
It's very tough to regulate stupidity. Let me just put it that way.
Behavior is difficult, but at least I'm tracking it, so good, thank you. Thank you for that. Just a couple minutes left. Ty, you have anything for the good of the order, Commissioner, item-wise, or anything you want to bring up?
I don't think so. No.
Okay, does that open it up? We've got another
Wait,
6
we're going
minutes?
We were back to me again.
Okay.
No, go ahead, Gary, go ahead. I'm done.
Okay, we didn't get into this, the mask issue, for an example, on the EDC, whether, and I use that just as an the PPE. I don't wanna be in the middle of, handing out PPE from us to different businesses. But I would like to help the EDC solve a problem for a restaurant, for an example, that wants to open up, can't find adequate PPE. I think that is a valid expenditure if we gave that to the EDC or the Chamber of Commerce to deal with that. So just kind of a point of interest as we move on with this. And then I guess we are gonna have a continuing discussion on the presentation that we had the other day about how much money is gonna go to the EDC and stuff. When's that gonna come up?
I have a scheduled 3-hour meeting on the 12th.
Okay.
But it's not just that, it's gonna be all the proposals.
The Chamber of
Which
Commerce,
includes the departments, everybody coming in with money.
All the proposals,
Okay.
including, at that time, we'll have a much better understanding how much we have spent. So, and so we can ask for a reimbursement.
Okay,
the Chamber of Commerce has a, I don't know, it's a ribbon cutting to unite the community or something coming
tie the
up.
ribbon, tie the ribbon.
Tie the ribbon, but I guess it's in a reverse of a ribbon cutting, is that what's going on?
Yeah, that's a new initiative, and you have an email in your inbox that explain in more detail what that is all about. Jenica reached out to me, and I said that would be, I don't think the board itself needs to participate in all the different events, so I asked her to reach out to you and your assistants for you to see your availability.
Okay, so we're not gonna do it as a board, but we might do it individually?
I asked Kelly to schedule it for me.
Yeah, as I did, and I just wanted to make sure everybody was aware of
And
it.
I believe you received that email from Jenica as well as your
Yeah.
assistants. And that would be the best way. I was supposed to organize a formal meeting of the board, going outside and participate in any type of events.
I gotta give Jenica huge pats on the back for what she's doing. My goodness, she has not only hit the deck running in January, but then we smacked in the face on March 12th when we shut down the county. And she has just been running full steam. And I'm exceedingly impressed with her and the work that she's done. So anyway, go ahead. Is that it?
That's all I have.
Okay, ribbon tying, we got that done. What else?
Sales tax.
Yes,
We-
not enough.
We're going to be talking about reductions in sales tax, which might go on. How many funds, Robin, do we have that are directly regulated to sales tax and the expenditure in a certain area like TST or something? What do we have, 4 or 5 of those? that are
Roughly five that
directly
are
related?
dependent. There's the general fund, treatment sales tax, detention sales tax. Our TCOM derives a significant amount of revenue from sales tax.
Seems like
Those are
there's
the-
one other one too.
Main ones that come immediately to mind.
Okay, but as we move forward, I think we've got another discussion coming up on budget
Yeah, hopefully next week.
next week. And I just want to make a proposal. Those sales tax funds, except the general fund, have a fund balance in there, and most of them, I think, are pretty healthy. I'm not saying it's too much or anything, but I would just as soon not spend a bunch of time on those funds that, yes, we're gonna be down whatever, 12% or 18%, whatever the prediction is. But that just means that funding, the balance left in that fund is not gonna be quite as much, but they're all healthy. I just don't wanna spend a lot of time on that. I wanna go into our general fund and spend more time on our general fund, because our general fund has a direct impact on our employees and our serviceability. So I just bring that up, Robin. You got about 10 seconds to respond and we're out of time.
I have the financial plans ready for your review.
Okay.
Perfect, thank you.
And next week is gonna be exactly, that will be the focus of the commissioners. Is really on the budget amendment. Thumbs up, thumbs down on all the proposals related to the general fund.
Got it.
Okay.
Good hour and a half briefing this morning, Commissioners. Thank you very kindly. And Romero and Robin, thank you very much. Elizabeth, thank you for hanging out with us. Appreciate it. Thank you, Brian. And we are now adjourned.